Sarah Mitchell sat on the same park bench she'd called home for the last 6 months. Her clothes were worn but always clean, as she made sure of that. At 42, life had given her more than her fair share of heartbreak. The sudden death of her husband, medical bills that drained her savings, and a string of bad luck had left her here, on Maple Street, with everything she owned tucked into 2 shopping bags. But even now, Sarah held on to something the world couldn't take: a compassion. Her eyes still saw people, not just passing faces, and her heart still cared, even when the world didn't care for her. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September, the kind where the sunlight is soft and the air carries a quiet promise of change. Sarah watched the neighborhood children play when she noticed little Emma Rodriguez, maybe 4 years old, with dark curls and blue sneakers that lit up when she walked. Emma lived in the brick apartment building across the street with her mother, a young woman who always seemed to be in a hurry, juggling too much at once. Emma would wave at Sarah sometimes, and Sarah would wave back, a small kindness exchanged between 2 worlds that rarely touched. That Tuesday began like every other day until around 3 o'clock. Sarah caught a whiff of smoke, sharp and wrong. She looked up to see dark smoke curling out from a second-floor window of Emma's building. Flames licked at the curtains, growing fast. People gathered, shouting. Someone yelled that the fire department was on the way. But Sarah's eyes found something that froze her blood: Emma's small face at the window, her tears streaking down soot-covered cheeks, her mouth open in a silent scream. Someone shouted, "The fire trucks are 10 minutes out." But 10 minutes might as well have been forever. Sarah dropped her bags and ran. Voices called after her to stop, but she didn't hear them. She could only see Emma. The front door burned her hand when she touched it. Wrapping her jacket around her arm, she pushed through. Smoke filled the hallway, thick and suffocating. She dropped low, remembering what she'd once learned: to stay near the floor, where the air is cleaner. Crawling up the stairs, she called out Emma's name. The apartment door hung open, and the heat hit her like an oven. "Emma!" she shouted. A small cry answered from the back. Sarah wrapped her jacket around her face and pushed forward. The living room was already in flames, but she could see movement through the haze. Emma was huddled in a corner clutching a stuffed rabbit, frozen with fear. Sarah grabbed her, held her close. "I've got you, sweetheart. Close your eyes and hold on to me." The way out was worse now, flames blocking their path. Sarah remembered the back stairwell, rarely used and cluttered with old furniture. It was their only hope. Carrying Emma tightly, she moved through the heat, her skin burning, lungs screaming for air. The rabbit slipped from Emma's hand, but there was no going back. One step, then another, until finally they burst through the back door into open air just as sirens wailed in the distance. Sarah collapsed on the grass, Emma still in her arms. They were coughing, crying but alive. Paramedics rushed in. Someone wrapped a blanket around her. Emma's mother appeared moments later, falling to her knees, clutching her daughter and sobbing thank yous that Sarah barely heard. At the hospital, Sarah was treated for burns and smoke inhalation. The doctors wanted her to stay overnight, but she refused. No insurance, no money. She just wanted to leave quietly. The next morning, when she returned to her bench, the place was swarmed with news vans. The story had spread. Homeless woman saves child from fire. They wanted interviews, photos, headlines. Sarah slipped away before anyone could find her. She hadn't done it for attention. She did it because a child needed saving. 3 days later, sitting in a small park across town, Sarah saw a black car pull up. A tall man in a gray suit with silver hair stepped out. He looked around, then walked toward her. "Sarah Mitchell?" She nodded cautiously. "My name's David Rodriguez," he said. "Emma is my granddaughter." Sarah's breath caught. Now that she looked closely, she could see the same kind eyes. "I've been searching for you for 3 days," David said, sitting beside her. "My daughter told me what you did, how you ran into that fire when everyone else just stood by. You saved my granddaughter's life." Sarah stared at her hands, the burn still healing. "Anyone would have done the same, but they didn't," David said softly. "You did, and Emma asks about you every day. She calls you her angel." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This isn't about money," he said gently. It's about a second chance. I own a company, Rodriguez Industries. We build homes for people who need them. I'd like you to help us run our community outreach program. It comes with housing, a salary, and benefits." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't speak. "I've learned something in my 60 years, David continued. "Real wealth isn't money, it's character. It's doing the right thing when it costs you everything. You've got that kind of wealth, Sarah." Tears rolled down her face. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll come see me tomorrow," he said with a smile. "Say you'll give yourself the chance you deserve." Sarah thought about that moment in the fire when every instinct told her to turn back, but she didn't. Maybe this was life's way of returning the favor. "Okay," she whispered. David smiled, and in his eyes, Sarah saw the same light she'd seen in him, as a hope, gratitude, and faith in the goodness of people. 6 months later, Sarah had an apartment, a job she loved, and dinners every week with Emma's family. Emma called her Aunt Sarah and still told everyone about the day her angel saved her. Sarah had learned that sometimes, you really do have to walk through fire, literally or noted, to find your way home, and that one act of courage can change more than one life, because in the end, all we really have is each other. And when we choose kindness, when we choose to act, that's when miracles happen. 6 months had passed since the fire. Maple Street looked different now, and not because it had changed, but because Sarah had. She no longer sat on the bench outside the park. She walked past it on her way to work every morning, coffee in hand, wearing a light blue cardigan Emma had picked out for her. It still amazed her sometimes as to how quickly life could shift when someone believed in you. Her apartment was small but filled with warmth, a second-hand couch, a few potted plants, and drawings Emma made for her hanging on the fridge. Every night before bed, she'd glance at those crayon hearts and stick-figure smiles and whisper a quiet thank you to life, to chance, to the fire that had both burned and rebuilt her world. Her new job at Rodriguez Industries wasn't easy. Managing the community outreach program meant long days, endless paperwork, and more stories of struggle than most people could handle. But Sarah understood those stories. She listened, not just with her ears, but with her heart. One morning, David stopped by her office. "You've been here 6 months, he said, leaning on the doorframe with that familiar gentle smile. "You've helped 30 families find housing, set up 2 food drives, and started a volunteer mentorship program. That's no small thing." Sarah smiled. "It's not just me, it's the team. They're the reason this works." David nodded, though his eyes softened. "Maybe, but every team needs someone who remembers what it's like to lose everything and still keep going." That weekend, Sarah visited Emma and her mother. Emma ran to her the moment she stepped through the door, jumping into her arms. "Aunt Sarah, guess what? I'm in kindergarten now." "I heard." Sarah laughed, spinning her around. "And I brought something for you." She handed Emma a small gift, a plush white rabbit with a pink ribbon around its neck. Emma gasped. "Like the one from the fire?" Sarah smiled. "A new one, for new beginnings." That night, after dinner, David joined Sarah on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in golds and purples. "She talks about you all the time," he said. "She still calls you her angel." Sarah shook her head. "I'm no angel, I just did what anyone should have done." David looked at her quietly for a moment. "Maybe, but the world needs more people who do what they should, not just say they would." A few weeks later, the city held a small ceremony to honor local heroes. Sarah hadn't wanted to go, but David insisted. The mayor spoke, calling her name, and the crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. She felt out of place in her borrowed dress, her hands trembling as she accepted the plaque. After the ceremony, a teenage boy approached her. "Ma'am," he said, voice shy, "I saw what you did on TV after the fire. Yeah, I used to think no one cared, but because of you, I joined the youth shelter program. I want to help people too." Sarah blinked back tears. "That's wonderful," she said softly. "Keep that heart of yours. The world needs it." That night, she sat by her apartment window, looking out at the quiet city lights. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel lost. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Sometimes, she thought about the fire, the smoke, the fear, the heat, and how it could have ended so differently. But then she'd think of Emma's laughter, David's kindness, the families she now helped every day, and she realized something powerful. The fire hadn't destroyed her life, it had reignited it. And as long as she had breath in her lungs and love in her heart, Sarah Mitchell would keep showing up for people because one act of courage had once saved a child, and that same courage could now save so many more. Because the world doesn't just need heroes, it needs hearts brave enough to care, even when it hurts.